Hello, my name is Oscar Gonzalez, and today I will be presenting my resolution for water scarcity, which is the Environmental Protection Agency will mandate that municipalities set a graduated price for water based on monthly use, with an increase starting at 3,000 gallons. When someone who has visited the Oregon coast or any beach for that matter hears about water scarcity, it kind of seems like it's not really an issue. If you've ever seen the ocean, there's tons of water in it, and water actually makes up 71% of the Earth's surface. But out of all that water, 97% of it is salt water, which is no good to us. This means only 3% of the Earth's water is fresh water. And out of that 3%, 2.5% of it is either frozen in glaciers, up in the atmosphere, or too deep underground for us to reach at a reasonable price. This means that out of all the water on the Earth, the global population relies on 0.5% of it, which is the actual fresh water that we actually can access. Here in the US, we withdraw 3/4 of our fresh water from rivers, lakes, and reservoirs. The remaining 1/4 is drawn from underground aquifers. So when I talk about water scarcity as an issue, I'm not saying that the earth is running out of water, because the earth will always have as much water as it currently has. But what water scarcity actually refers to is the human population's ability to access that 0.5% of fresh water. Water scarcity is already a major issue today. This is largely due to the fact that accessibility to fresh water is not equal across the world. Places like Uganda, Ethiopia, and Nigeria are some of the poorest in terms of accessibility to safe water. In today's day, about a third of the world's global population actually lives in water scarce areas for at least part of the year. And with the global population estimated to increase by about 2 billion people by the year 2050, so will the percent of people without access to fresh water. So typically when we think about water scarcity, we think about it as an issue for the developing world, such as places like Ethiopia and Nigeria, again, places that already have very little access to fresh water, and not really as an issue here as much. This probably has to do largely with the fact that water is so accessible to us here. Most of us wake up in the morning, turn on the faucet, brush our teeth, take a shower, do whatever, and go on with our day. Not once do we really take a second thought to think of where that water is coming from. We tend to have this perception that water is this never-ending supply, when really it's not. The people of Cape Town had a pretty similar perception until they were faced with the challenge of avoiding their day zero, which was the day their city water supply was supposed to be completely depleted. And many other major cities around the world are predicted to face a similar challenge in avoiding their own day zero. Cities like London, Mexico City, Miami, and tons more. In the year 2071, it's estimated that 96 out of the 204 water basins in the United States won't be able to keep up with monthly demands. And although this makes it seem like we have quite a bit of time before we start running into issues here in the United States, that's simply just not true. Just last year, the United States government declared a water shortage at Lake Mead. Lake Mead is one of the Colorado River's main reservoirs. Due to the shortage, there will be water supply cuts that will affect mostly farmers in the Arizona and Nevada area. But it's predicted that the water flow of the Colorado River will continue to drop significantly in the next couple of years. So because of this, much larger water supply cuts are predicted to happen, and these will impact roughly around 4 million people that rely on the Colorado River for at least some of their water supply. And the picture here shown is of the Colorado River. You can tell just how much it has gone down by the bathtub ring around it. In the past 20 years, it has seen a 120 feet decrease in water. In this resolution, an increased rate was to begin after 3,000 gallons of water per month. This number was derived from the average American water use. The average American uses about 88 gallons of water a day, or 2,640 gallons a month. So the 3,000 gallons is far above the average and more than sufficient for people to live on. Compared to most countries, America uses far more water on average. In comparison to the average UK citizen, the average American uses more than double the amount of water. It'll also be shown a little later just how much less water you can actually do with. And in this picture, it's important to note that most of the water we use is used outdoors for things such as watering plants and gardening. By setting these increasing rates, we increase the value of water. Increasing the value of water has its positive effects. For starters, this makes it so water isn't being wasted or taken for granted. The average American blindly wastes thousands of gallons of water annually. For example, simply by leaving the faucet running while you brush your teeth, you waste about 8 gallons of water a day and nearly 3,000 gallons of water a year. Also, an increased value of water will lead to larger investments in the future of our freshwater and its infrastructure. The American Society of Engineers found that 6 billion gallons of safe drinking water are lost every day here in the United States due to leaky pipes in the country's water infrastructure. This is because water is so undervalued that the infrastructure is not a priority for it to be maintained. Also, with that, the increased value would make it so it would make more economical sense for us to actually try and reach untapped groundwater that we have not had access to prior. I began to touch on Cape Town a little earlier. Cape Town is a city in South Africa that is home to 4.6 million people. In April of 2018, Cape Town was expected to reach their day zero. This is where the city's water supply would be completely depleted. Although they never reached their day zero, they were able to avoid doing so by some extreme water rationing. Each person was only allowed 13 gallons of water a day. This really made the people of Cape Town think about how they were using their water and how to ration. In just a couple of years, they were able to reduce their annual water usage in half. And I know the situation is a lot more extreme, but as I said earlier, many other major cities are expected to see their own day zero, cities like London and even Miami. So this isn't a one-time thing. This is an actual possibility for many cities. I should also mention that Cape Town, in a way, kind of got lucky. It was seeing a 7-year drought when it finally rained. This rain helped its water supply be refilled. So other cities may not be so lucky in the future, especially with climate change. But this kind of just goes to show how impactful a collective effort can be when everyone is on the same page working towards the same goal. So although increasing the value of water has its benefits, it also has its negative effects. With an increased value of water, there is also an increase in the price of consumer goods, more specifically nutrient-rich foods, since these take up the most amounts of water to be produced. It takes almost 2,000 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. This means that nutrient-dense foods will be less affordable and less accessible to lower income families. This leads to poor nutrition, more susceptibility to disease, and poor health. These are all things that were found to be linked to poor academic performance and lower chances of economic success. So this makes it a lot harder for lower income families to start to climb up the economical ladder. In this resolution, it mainly focuses on the domestic use of our nation's water supply, which only makes up 8% of our annual freshwater usage. It can be argued that all the efforts made by the general public to save water will have such a small impact that it won't make a difference. Instead, it can be said that the focus should be placed on industries and agricultures, which have more of a capability to actually make an impactful difference when it comes to the conservation of our nation's freshwater supply. Lastly, it's easy to set the standard based on the average American's use of water, but there are also other external factors that play a role, such as climate. In hotter areas, water evaporates much faster. This then dries out the land, which then makes it to where more water is required to get the same results that lower amounts of water would get in cooler places. According to the EPA, outdoor water use accounts for 30% of the total household water use, but in arid regions, it can be as much as up to 60%. So it can be said that it's not fair to set a standard by treating everyone equally without taking into consideration the geographical locations and accessibility to fresh water sources. So that wraps up my presentation for my resolution on water scarcity. All my citations for each individual slide can be found on this OneNote. Thank you, guys.